And then have you ever had a case where a spouse has tried to hide assets and you or maybe a forensic expert uncovered it? And how did that impact the case overall?
So
This is the Illinois Family Law Insider Podcast. My name is Katie VanDeusen from Sterling Lawyers, and with me today I have partner Nina Kelly. Thanks for joining me today, Nina.
hey, Katie, thanks for having me again.
We're going to be talking today about hiding assets in divorce. What are some red flags? What are some tools with regard to discovery? And what can you actually do? So, we're going to be kind of delving into how do you first identify someone is hiding assets or maybe even doing some negative things with the estate? How do you identify warning signs? What discovery tools do you utilize? And what legal strategies can you use to kind of uncover the truth? And what do you do about it? So, first and foremost, we are going to be delving into warning signs that someone may be hiding assets or maybe spending funds inappropriately. So, Nina, what are some early red flags or some signals that a spouse may be hiding assets or money?
So I would say, if you usually had kind of access or at least knowledge of what they were doing, and all of a sudden there's like a bunch of secrecy, you can't get into accounts, or there's, the passwords were changed, etc. If you do have access and you're seeing weird bank transfers or a lot of cash withdrawals, that can be an issue. If they have a business and all of a sudden it's not doing so well or it's losing money or something like that, maybe they might be, funneling money out of the business. If they usually get a bonus at a certain time and all of a sudden you're not seeing it, are they delaying that, or whether it be a bonus commission, something like that? Or are they, kind of lying about money that they've spent? Are they overpaying taxes? Are they prepaying taxes? Are they giving money to friends and family as like a fake debt that they have? All that type of stuff you can kind of look into.
Absolutely. And then would you say it's very common for people to hide money in divorce cases? Like, how often are you actually seeing this?
I don't think it's as common as people think, but it definitely happens. I think businesses are like the number one culprit, especially if they're trying to hide business income because, you can claim it's so intertwined when it comes to business income and personal income. So they can really try to say they're not having anything or it's in business accounts or what have you. That's kind of the biggest and most problematic one. If W-2 employees can do it too, although it's harder because, what people don't understand all the time is, well, they put it in a different account. It's like, well, as long as we know about that account, I don't care what account it's in, right? Or they're maybe they're over contributing to a retirement account. It's like, well, that's still marital, right? So that the
Exactly.
money's somewhere else, it's not gone.
It's true. I feel like a lot of times, I think you hit the nail on the head where if there's like a paper trail associated with where the money is going, then I feel like it's still okay. I
Mhm.
think businesses, it's just hard. It makes it more complex to trace where the money is going or the in and out. And then cash, like cash
Cash
too.
is huge.
It's so hard to prove or to show. So I feel like a lot of times if people are doing these types of, trying to hide money, hide assets, as long as there's a paper trail, I feel like it sets us up still for some level of success with like recapturing it. It's just those other factors like cash being sent away to family and friends. Sometimes I think that's really hard. Cash, employment, and then businesses, like you said, it just adds a layer of complexity.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So, when it comes to discovery tools, what can you do as an attorney, Nina, to kind of help uncover or get to the bottom of whether someone is in fact hiding money or maybe spending inappropriately? Like what are your go-to discovery tools?
So the typical discovery that'll pretty much happen if you're doing discovery in any case, right? Is going to be an interrogatory. Those are written questions that are answered under oath, but those don't really show. I mean, they should list the actual accounts that they have and maybe balances. Those aren't as helpful though. Really, it's a notice to produce or a request to produce documents where they have to produce bank statements, tax return, credit card statements, loan documentation, because then we can look at those. And if it's a case where we think they are hiding money, we actually go through and say, okay, I want to show me every single transfer that I'll have a spreadsheet of, show me every transfer that went into an account that is not my client's or opposing party's account. If it's over, $100 or $500 or whatever our threshold is for that case, to see if there are other accounts, right? If they're transferring money to a third party or if they have hidden accounts, it's kind of easy to find it that way. And then a good one too is a subpoena. If you think they're not disclosing all of their accounts that they have, I've had this happen several times where they think, oh, well, I'll just give them one checking account. But then I subpoena Chase and they've got four. But usually that comes up if you're looking at the transfers between accounts too. So I mean, it's not easy. Cash, I think, is the biggest problem. But otherwise, I don't think it's easy to hide money because, too, if you're going to look at a pay stub, you can see what account the money's getting deposited into.
Yep.
Or if it's two accounts or three accounts, and then you have that. So as long as you're kind of looking at the documents and you have the discovery, it can be done, but it's not easy to hide money. Unless they prepared before. Unless they 5 years ago started hiding money, then you could have problems.
It's true. The planning phase or however long that was can definitely have an impact on things. And then what about, depositions? Have you utilized depositions as a discovery tool in certain cases?
Definitely. If they're being cagey about responding to discovery, you want to get them under oath, they're saying no, they don't have any other bank accounts or explaining what these accounts are for, asking what the cash withdrawals were from or were for, excuse me. Those can be super helpful to kind of get them right there in front of you answering those questions.
And then can you tell us, Nina, like what is a forensic accountant and when would you want to bring in maybe a third party when it comes to analyzing discovery documents to get to the bottom of whether someone is in fact hiding assets or hiding money? How do you make that determination as an attorney?
So if there's more than maybe 4 or 5 accounts, then usually I can't do all and a lot of transfers, right? If there's not a lot of transfers between them, then that should be fine. But if you're getting into a lot of bank accounts and there's a lot of transfers, we don't have the capacity to be able to tell like a forensic accountant would. Or if it's a business and we think they're really lying about their receivables or their, profit and loss statement, something like that, it might be helpful because, at some point it does take somebody that really specializes in that. As far as deciding, Katie, I think you can attest to this, is like it kind of depends how much money's at stake, right? And how much time the client wants to take in their divorce because it's a third party expert, so you got to pay them. And how much money do you really think is lost and how badly do you want to go after it kind of are the considerations.
Absolutely. That cost benefit analysis should always come into play whenever you're considering whether to bring in an expert. I totally agree with you, Nina. And then kind of transitioning in terms of if you suspect someone is hiding things or, maybe acting inappropriately when it comes to asset management or income management, if someone thinks that their spouse is doing these things, what is the very first thing that they should be doing in a divorce case?
So first tell your attorney but give some context, right? Like we can't just say, oh, they're hiding money because I bet they would do that type of thing. It's like, okay, well then, we can still look into it and I'll still do the analysis if you think that's happening. But if you have like a reason to believe if they just transferred $20,000 out of an account, we can actually file like a motion to restrict their movements, right? And we can show that to the judge if we can see that they've actually been doing something, or at least we know to look into it.
Mhm.
And then also gather the information you do have. If you do have proof of these cash withdrawals or the account statements or the prior taxes showing they used to earn a lot more, send it to us as well.
And then have you ever had experience, Nina, where someone has lied on their financial disclosure statement and, does a court follow through with any penalization for that? What have you seen in terms of your experience?
So honestly, they don't nearly as much as they should. Typically, what happens is they will lie on the disclosure, we'll find out about it, and either you threaten to file sanctions, then they fix it, or you do file sanctions, they fix it in the meantime. So the judge is kind of like, oh, problem solved, they fix it, which is BS because they were clearly trying to get away with it. Some
Yep.
judges you can file for sanctions against it. Usually we end up resolving, we kind of use it as a negotiating tool, right? I won't file for sanctions if you agree. So usually it gets resolved. But I mean, the judge can, but frankly, they don't do it nearly enough.
I totally agree in terms of like experience, and I have felt the same way for sure.
Mhm.
And then have you ever had a case where a spouse has tried to hide assets and you or maybe a forensic expert uncovered it? And how did that impact the case overall?
So I have, and really though, then it just kind of opens up, it brings that money back into the divorce process, right? It brings that money back into the estate of what we're dividing. Or I guess it could be for child support too, if it's a paternity case. But typically this is more important in a divorce because they're marital assets. So practically speaking, I would love to say, yes, the judge threw the hammer and gave everything to us. And it's kind of like, no, they might, again, sanction the person. Maybe they're not going to let them testify to something at trial, or maybe they would sanction them, but more realistically, it's just, okay, we found the money and that's going to be divisible too. So at least the client can have a portion of it. I had a case too where sometimes it's gone. I think, we tried to we knew somebody was investing a bunch in the stock market and they were lying about it. So we eventually found out where the stocks were and we got all the statements, but they had lost it all. So even though we found it, it kind of didn't matter. We still did kind of use it to our advantage. So I guess what didn't completely not matter. We didn't benefit as much as we would have liked. But, sometimes there's not much you can do if the money is gone, depending on the circumstances.
Totally agree. And then kind of just wrapping up with some closing advice from you, Nina. What's one thing that every divorcing client should do to protect themselves financially, even if they may not necessarily suspect the other party is doing some type of they may not directly suspect the person's hiding assets or transferring money out, but what would be one bit of advice that you would give them to protect themselves financially?
Make sure you have knowledge of what your marital estate is comprised of. So often, and nowadays it's very typical for people to have separate accounts, but it's like you need to at least know what's in there, how much your spouse is earning, what kind of accounts that they have. And if you could do that throughout the marriage, obviously that'd be ideal so that you know if anything changes. It's really having that transparency between the marriage, I think, would be the best thing to do to protect yourself.
I could not agree more. Transparency and knowledge. You'd be so surprised at how many people still, even in 2025, come to us and they say, I really have no idea.
Mhm.
I really have no clue. This other person managed everything and I've been left in the dark. And that really is just heartbreaking because it's in this day and age, everyone should be involved and you should have that transparency. And if you don't, get it
Right,
right away. And if
right.
that's not being shared, that should also be a bit of a red flag
Right,
too. So,
right. Enough of a red flag to call me maybe, no.
I
I mean,
know.
yeah, there might be something wrong.
And then what other advice can you give to someone who thinks something may be off, but doesn't want to seem paranoid? Again, it may be the
I
same
don't
exact response, like
like
transparency.
yeah, there shouldn't be a problem if you seem paranoid. Someone could easily put your paranoia at ease if they would just tell you. That's not a concern, I would say. I would never say, "Oh, well, we don't wanna come off that you're paranoid," ever.
I
They'll
agree.
just show you then, and then we can show that you don't have a reason.
The solve is just so easy. It's
Mhm.
and again, if that's not happening, that should really be a huge red flag in and of itself.
Right, right.
And then when should someone really start considering involving a forensic accountant? Is there a clear tipping point where you as an attorney would really advise someone, we really need to bring in, the big guns?
Yeah, it's really if I can't do it myself, because I will, to an extent, do my own forensic accounting, but I only have the capacity to do it so much, right? If it's a business that we need forensic accounting for, typically then I'm always gonna say, unless it's a very simple business. But as far as personal accounting and finances, if they only have a couple bank accounts, usually we can do it. But if it's really complex and their business is involved, then I think that's when we would wanna bring someone in.
I could not agree more. Thank you so much, Nina, for spending time with us today, talking through red flags, tools of discovery, and how to navigate if someone is hiding income or assets in a divorce case. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Nina.
And while tracking down hidden assets is tough, another financial blindside hits just as hard. And that's when your ex stops paying the mortgage. Whether your name is on the house or not, this mistake can leave you on the hook for thousands. In this next video, we will break down exactly what to do before it spirals. So click here to watch.